Another day, another new low for Joe Biden in a national poll. This one comes from Monmouth University, shout out to New Jersey, where Biden is down to 34% approval with 61% disapproving. That new low in the Monmouth poll is far from an outlier. Biden of late has also hit his lowest mark in the Wall Street Journal poll and Gallup's monthly survey. Not surprisingly, Biden's dismal approval ratings have translated into his possible general election matchup against Donald Trump as well. According to the Real Clear Politics polling average as of this week, Trump now leads Biden by 3.5 points, his widest margin ever over the incumbent. All of which raises a pretty simple question. Should Joe Biden drop out of the race in hopes that some other Democrat would have a better chance of defeating Trump? Charlie Cook, who, not for nothing, was my first boss in Washington and is a longtime political handicapper, posed just that question in a recent column. Here's a little bit of what Charlie wrote. Biden saw himself in 2020 as the only Democrat who could defeat Trump. Indeed, he may have been correct. Yet while he certainly still feels an obligation to run in order to prevent his predecessor from returning to power, it may no longer be the case that he's the only one capable of it. Concerns about his age and whether his health and capabilities are good for another 5 years, as well as voters' very dim view of his economic stewardship, suggest that he would have a harder time defeating Trump than a Democrat without his baggage. Now, outwardly, the Biden team shows zero signs of concern, dismissing the poll results as A, too early to matter, and B, not reflective of election results on the ground. But behind closed doors, the tensions of enduring months of poor poll numbers are starting to show. As the Washington Post reported recently, and I'm going to quote, "After pardoning a pair of turkeys, an annual White House tradition, Biden delivered some stern words for the small group assembled. His poll numbers were unacceptably low, and he wanted to know what his team and his campaign were doing about it. He complained that his economic message had done little to move the ball, even as the economy was growing and unemployment was falling," according to people familiar with his comments who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss a private conversation. Okay, now before I go any further, let me say this. I am not passing judgment on the success or not of Joe Biden's first term. I've candidly been surprised that he's been able to get as much passed, infrastructure bill, CHIPS and Science Act, etc., with a divided Congress as he has. And yes, Donald Trump, I believe, is an active threat to American democracy, not just by his unwillingness to accept the 2020 election results, but also by the authoritarian adjacent positions he has staked out in this campaign. The reality, however, is that there is considerable and lasting skepticism about Biden and the electorate, from his handling of the economy to his foreign policy to, yes, his advanced age. Whether you think these issues are media creations or not, they are not, the fact remains that his numbers are what they are. And in politics, like Bill Parcells said in sports, you are what your numbers or record say you are. And Joe Biden's numbers, at least as of today, suggest that he will start 2024 as an underdog to Donald Trump. Now, I have said and written many times that I believe that Biden, warts and all, is the best and strongest nominee for Democrats. My argument has always been that, yes, Biden has issues, but that he also has strengths that any other Democratic candidate would not have. Among those strengths, number one, he's the current president, and the power of incumbency is a real thing in American politics. Number two, he's already beaten Donald Trump once. And number three, he has a depth of experience and wisdom at the highest levels of politics that none of the other would-be Democrats can match. Now, I still believe all of those things. And yet, I'd be lying if I said I was still totally convinced that Biden represents the best hope for Democrats to beat Trump. Why? Honestly, I spent a bunch of time thinking about that question. And the best analogy I can think of is renovating a house. Just stick with me here for a minute. Okay, so let's say you're in the house flipping business. You see a house that has great bones and is reasonably priced. It's a sound bet, so you buy it. As you start the renovation process, unforeseen problems start to crop up. There's asbestos in the walls, say, so you suck it up and you fix it. But then you find mold, the bad kind, in the basement. It's not cheap, but you fix that. Then a major rainstorm comes through and you realize that the basement floods. As you stare at the estimated cost to fix that, you start to think, am I just throwing good money after bad? As in, no matter how many things you fix in the house, is there always going to be something else that pops up? And at what point do you suck up your losses and just move on? That, for me, is the question facing Democrats when it comes to Joe Biden's current candidacy. Biden has addressed many of the issues that people said were A, his fault, and B, going to doom him. Inflation is down. Gas prices are down. Most economists believe we have dodged a recession. He has, in short, cleared plenty of hurdles. And yet, his poll numbers just keep going down. Which makes me think, or at least consider, that minds are simply made up about Biden. That people have decided that his age is a major issue and nothing Biden does will change their mind. That people have decided that even though they feel okay about their own personal economic situation, the overall economy is somehow in their minds bad. In short, that a majority of voters have judged Biden and found him wanting for one reason or another. And that nothing, including facts, will change that opinion. Again, I don't know that to be the case. Biden has generally laid low in the race so far, ceding the ground to Trump to make the case that the incumbent is failing in every aspect of the job. That will not always be the reality. Biden and his team will spend the next 11 months not only selling his accomplishments to a skeptical public, but also making clear what it would mean to the country if Trump gets back into the White House. So what? The question Democrats, starting with Joe Biden, need to ask themselves is whether the risk they are taking is worth it given the stakes. This is not simply about the difference between electing a Democrat and electing a Republican. Trump would, if he wins, pursue an agenda of vengeance and score settling, the likes of which we have never seen before in this country. Those are the stakes. And that is the consideration Joe Biden needs to make. If the ultimate goal is to keep Donald Trump from the White House, is Joe Biden still the best person to make that happen?